You think about what that means and what we look to. We look to God for our direction and our guidance. And our leaders should do the same thing. I think of what the Bible says. I think of the past verses in the Bible that say we have to look to God for direction. And the kings that look to God for direction, and kings that didn't look to God, and how prosperity was either given or not given based on the kings looking to him. And then we think of what the king talked about in Luke, and how Isaiah talked about it and foretold the story. He said, "For unto us a child is born, for us a son is given. The government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace." Yes, our God, our Father, the one that we need to look to, the one that our leaders need to look to for guidance and direction, to have our nation blessed, to have our nation prosper, just like what occurred in the Old Testament. So today, that is what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to discuss. So with me, I'm excited to have the love of my life, the person that I've been with for over 30 years, the person that I've had 4 children with, 4 wonderful children, that has been a kindergarten teacher for 24 years and now works at this university. I'd love for you to give a warm welcome to my wonderful wife, Lynette Feenstra. So, for our first candidate, I'm so excited to have the governor of Florida and his wife come, First Lady Casey. They've done so much, and you know many of their stories. But I just want to tell you a little bit about their story. Ron was raised by his mother, a nurse, a father who installed cable boxes, and his mother was a nurse. He attended Yale University and was a captain of the varsity baseball team. He also graduated with honors from Harvard Law School, where he also was commissioned as a U.S. Navy JAG officer. Ron was a prosecutor for Florida. He was elected to Congress in 2012, and in 2018, he became the governor of Florida. In 2020, he again ran for governor and set a record-setting nearly 20-point win over the Democrat competitor. Casey, his wife, is also amazing. She has a career and holds a degree in economics from the University of Charleston. She went on to be a newscaster and was on a television host for the Golf Channel. Her initiative in Florida is Resiliency Florida, a goal to equip students with the skills that will help them learn to preserve their life's inevitable challenges by creating brain health. She also leads a cause called Hope Florida, a pathway to promise to support youth aging out of foster care. So please, if you could, let us give a warm, wonderful welcome to Governor DeSantis and his wife, Casey. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Well, you can tell who's from Florida, the one that forgot their sleeves.
We've seen a lot of each other over the last year, and really got to know him. He did my Feenstra family picnic in May. Then it was a little warmer, a little different weather, but now you're seeing what Iowa all has, right? I mean, the warm weather to a little cooler today. So.
Well, we were in Sioux City. We flew in late last Friday night. Saturday morning, we had our 3 kids, a first grade kindergartner, pre-K, Florida born and bred, had never seen snow before. So they wake up at 5:30 in the morning, look out the window, they see snow, and all of a sudden, you know, Katie barred the door, they wake up their mom and dad, and they had to go out there and do it. So they've now been able to throw some snowballs hit me, hit their mother, and they told me, they're like, Daddy, you know, we like the snow better than the beach. And I'm like, oh, so that means you don't want to live in Florida anymore? They're like, no, we want the snow in Florida. I'm like, it doesn't work that way, kids. You got to make a choice.
Well, they could come and live here if they wanted to. Right? Well, I just want to talk, obviously, this is our Faith and Family event. And I want to just ask you, you know, growing up, both of you, what did your faith and family mean to you? And how does that apply and shape how you serve our nation and serve your state?
Well, for me, faith in God is really the foundation of how I live my life, but also how I conduct myself in an elected office. When you're doing what's right, when you have your compass set to true north, every single day in this process, media, opposition, everything, it's all designed to push you off course. It's all designed to divert you from being able to achieve what you're looking to achieve. And so having that foundation of faith in God is really what keeps you centered and what allows you to keep that compass set to true north, especially when you're dealing with things where you're taking a lot of incoming. I mean, during COVID, we had to take a stand in Florida. We believed, contrary to the Faucis of the world, that kids should be in school, that we should have the businesses open, that we should be not forcing people to take these vaccines. And we got pilloried for doing that. And a lot of people said you're making mistakes because you're getting hammered. But you know, you got to kind of look beyond that moment. And you got to know that ultimately God has a plan for this, and let the chips fall where they may. I don't know that you're able to do that if you don't have that foundation of faith in God. So when people ask me about, hey, what do you recommend in terms of leadership? Well, what should people think about? I think there's a lot of things, but what I tell people, first, put on the full armor of God.
I think that that's so true. And you know, our daughter the other day had a homework assignment, and it was to memorize Ephesians 6, 10 through 18. And I don't think that that was a coincidence, because he invokes putting on the full armor of God, the belt of truth, and the shield of faith. And, you know, I think that everything that we do, and particularly for me when I was going through some pretty significant health challenges, having that foundation of faith, knowing that I'm not in control, that there is a higher being, gave me the ability, plus having a really great husband who helped me every step of the way through 6 rounds of chemotherapy, 3 surgeries, and 6 weeks of radiation. But having that foundation really gave me the strength. And another thing about my faith, going through what I went through with my medical problems, you know, I never would have thought that I would have come out stronger on the other side. I don't think that there's a lot that I would be able to do today had I had not gone through a lot of that. And I would never wish what I went through on anyone. It was awful. But it's amazing that the Lord really works in mysterious ways to put you in positions to be able to accomplish things He ultimately wants you to do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we appreciate your thoughts on that. And Casey, we're just really thankful that you are able to come today with your husband, and we appreciate your willingness to sit down and visit with us. We know you have 3 small children, and being on the campaign trail is definitely a sacrifice for your family. Randy and I, like many families in our community, we keep very busy with our work, our kids' activities, and so we need to really, you know, prioritize to make time with the family, you know, spend time together making meaningful conversations, you know, make sure you take the time to sit down with them, pray, read the Bible, attend church. So I know that is very important to the people of Iowa too. So could you tell us what it's been like balancing your family life while campaigning and then fulfilling your duties as governor and First Lady of Florida?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm happy to do it. So this is one of the rare exceptions where they are not with us right now. They usually are with us wherever we go, and we feel that that's very important. Not only do we want to spend time with them, clearly, because you know, if there's one thing that people say to me wherever I go, they say in a blink of an eye, they're going to be in college. Enjoy it. It goes fast. And so we want to be with them, but also this is an opportunity for them to understand what we're fighting for. We're fighting for their future, their ability to be able to accomplish the American dream, and really to understand our system, where our rights come from. They come from our Creator. The government's put in place to protect the rights that we innately have. It's never too early to start empowering our kids to understand they're the next generation that's going to inherit this republic. So they need to have a good foundation, and we do that. And so, you know, it's funny with our son. He is the biggest Ron DeSantis fan you have ever met in your entire life. And so he's in kindergarten. So, you know, you wonder when you're talking to your kids about the importance of the election and the importance, you know, what dad is fighting for. And he will watch every debate. He will watch, you know, interviews on YouTube. And so again, you wonder, like, how much do they really resonate? You know, he's in kindergarten. So one day I'm walking down the hallway and Mason looks at me and he goes, "Mama?" I'm like, "Yeah, buddy." He goes, "Our nation is in decline." And I said, "Why, yes, it's true, Mason." But it's true. And on a funnier note, he was watching, so this is just a side note, he loves football. Green Bay, it doesn't matter. He loves the Jaguars. He loves the Bucks. I mean, you name it, he will watch, and he loves football scores. So no matter, he's always trying, he'll write them on a board, and he'll tell you the day after. He's better than Siri. He'll tell you who played Thursday Night Football and what the score was. And so there was a debate the other day against Gavin Newsom, and of course, and Ron. And so he was asking, he goes, "Did Dad win?" I go, "Yeah, buddy, Dad won." And he goes, "What was the score?" And I was like, we couldn't even count it. It was so good. But no, we enjoy having them with us. These are very special times, and it's a blessing. I'm not going to lie, it's a little crazy though.
Well, I think so we've done events in all 99 Iowa counties, which is important. It's an important thing to do. And I would say our kids have been with us for clearly a majority of the 99 counties. And it's a type of thing where, as governor, one of the things I would always do, you can be very busy. I like to get out and do events in different parts of the state, particularly when, you know, we're pushing legislation. But I'd always make sure I got home at night. I very rarely stayed overnight anywhere else. And so we'd do that and get home for dinner, if not, before they go to bed. But even if I miss that next morning when they wake up, just making sure that you're present and making sure that you're able to spend time. We've really worked hard to include them in this process, which is a crazy process. But all things considered, they've handled it very, very well. They're a little bit upset at me right now because we live in Tallahassee, which is where the governor's residence is, and they've become fans of Florida State football. And so a couple weeks ago, they were asking me about what was going to happen with the playoff, and I said, well, if Florida State just wins the remainder of their games, there won't be more than 4 undefeated teams, and so they will go to the playoff. That's what will happen. And so Florida State won the rest of their games, ended the season undefeated. There were only 2 other undefeated teams, and yet Florida State got excluded from the playoff in favor of 2 one-loss teams, Alabama and Texas. And so my kids are telling me, "Daddy, you said they would make the playoffs. What happened?" And I don't really have a good answer for them for that. So if y'all can enlighten me on how this college football stuff works, that'd be helpful.
That is so funny. Maybe you want to tell them that maybe Florida State needs to join the Big 10 or the Big 12 or something like that. You know, ACC.
Well, but yeah, I mean, the thing is just that it's you do your thing. You win the games. I think because their star quarterback got injured. Yes. I think that was probably why they did that, and I get that, but. Nevertheless, and you got to think, we were in this debate the other night in Tuscaloosa for this Republican debate, and I'm there talking to these Alabama fans. They go to the playoff almost every year. Florida, when I was growing up, we were a college football machine between Miami, Florida, and Florida State. Right. It was like year in, year out, all these teams were competing. And then really in the last, seems like 10 years, it's been difficult. My first year as governor, because we have very good high school football in Florida, I told my staff, I want to write notes, congratulatory notes to every blue chip high school recruit on signing day. So they give me a stack, and I'm doing it, and it's like, you know, Dear Mike, congratulations on going to the University of Alabama. Dear Johnny, congratulations on going to Clemson. Dear Travis, congratulations on going to Georgia. And I'm like, wait a minute, why am I congratulating them for them leaving the state of Florida? We used to never lose recruits. It used to always be we would get the best recruits to stay in. So that's just how these things go. But nevertheless, it was a good season for them. But it cost the university millions and millions of dollars to get excluded from that playoff.
I want to... You and I are similar in the fact that my motto, my slogan is delivering results for the people of the 4th District, delivering results for Iowans. And you have the same situation, delivering results for Floridians. Can you talk a little bit about the results that you delivered for faith, for family, since you've been governor of Florida?
Sure. So my view, as you get elected to office, particularly an executive office like governor or president, you got to be right on the issues and the policy. I mean, we see somebody like Biden who's wrong on all this, it can do a lot of damage. But being right on the policy is not enough. You also have to be able to take that lead and implement that vision and deliver tangible results for people. So everything that I promised I would do for the people of Florida, I've delivered on 100% of those promises across the board. So you look at universal school choice, we beat the teachers union, and now every parent in Florida has an ability to send their kid to the school of their choice. Some of it is public schools within their school district, they have choice. They have charter schools, and then we have private scholarships where people can go. That's been a huge, huge boon to so many families. One of the things that we've done, and Casey was involved in pioneering this, is we wanted to be able to do things to help with child welfare, particularly for mothers, single mothers, who get caught up in the welfare system. And so instead of just going and getting a check and then coming back and getting another one, and that creates a certain cycle, Casey created something called Hope Florida, where she got churches and charities and businesses and individuals to plug into what's called the care portal. So if somebody shows up and they need something, maybe they have two twin daughters that are 1 year old and she just got kicked out of her apartment, that need will go and the churches will get it. And you'll have a church that'll come, bring that family in. And guess what? Once that happens, they don't go back for government assistance. They're on a pathway to prosperity. So these are difficult things where we've recognized that the faith community needs to be brought to the table to be able to deliver results for people. You cannot do it through a bureaucracy. That is not going to give anybody a path to independence. So we've worked very closely, and a lot of these blue states will not work with their churches. They view that as just totally unacceptable. We disagree. And the final thing I'll just say, we've been very strong at upholding religious liberty in the state of Florida. If you think about it, we have now situations where you have a football coach in Washington State, Coach Kennedy. He lost his job because he was going to midfield after the game to say a prayer. And a lot of players joined him, but it wasn't even required. You could do it or not. And he lost his job just by doing that. Goes to the Supreme Court. He wins a 6-3 decision to be reinstated. And people said that's a victory for religious liberty. But I would say to you, the fact that that case is even being brought, the fact that we're even in the Supreme Court for something like that, that shows you that religious liberty is not being honored in this country the way it is. And so in Florida, we believe as the Founding Fathers believe. Your right to practice your faith is not something that's given to you by government. It's something that's been granted to you by God. Government cannot infringe your free exercise. And yes, that means if you go to church on Sunday, but it also means you have the right to be able to live your faith out in society. Apart from that, I think what we're battling nationwide is a view of the left that they believe, they'll say that if someone mentions God in the public square or under God in the Pledge of Allegiance, that's, quote, an establishment of religion. That's not what the Founding Fathers believe. But they really want to establish religion. It's just the religion of secular leftism. And they want that to be the orthodoxy, so that if you, as a Christian or another faith, if your faith conflicts with their agenda, they expect you to bend the knee. That is not religious liberty as our Founding Fathers understood it. We reject the left, what they're doing. In Florida, we reject that, but we need to make sure we have full religious liberty nationwide in this country.
We absolutely believe we have to have religious freedom. I mean, that is paramount. It's in our Constitution. Lynette, I think there's a question from one of the students here at Dordt.
Yes, we are so grateful for so many students and college students and high school students that are visiting today. So we want to give a shout out to you. And some of the students submitted questions, and so we're just very excited to have them engaged in the political process. And, seeing their passion gives us hope, for America's future. So our first question is from Matt Haken, who is a civil engineering major here at Dordt University. Matt, can you raise your hand, please? All right, this is Matt's question. Governor, Our education at Dordt stresses the need for our Christian faith to inform all aspects of our lives, including when interacting with people we do not agree with. How will you show kindness and humility when working across the aisle while not wavering on your own convictions?
Well, it's a great question, and thank you for that. My philosophy has always been this. I have very strong principles. I'm willing to go out and fight for that. I'm willing to go out and fight for the people that I represent, especially when it's not easy. And we have big battles that we fight. And fortunately, in Florida, I've won those battles. I mean, we beat Fauci on COVID. We beat Soros on crime by removing some of these radical prosecutors. We've beat the left on ensuring election integrity, and on down the line. And it's important that we actually fight and win. But what I also understand is, you and I can be in a political battle over one issue today, but then 6 weeks from now, there may be another issue that maybe we are allied on. And so if you disagree with me 80% of the time, that's fine. And we can fight on those 80%. But if you agree with me on the 20%, I'm willing to put aside the previous disagreements and work with you on the other 20%. I think that's the way you're able to get more stuff done. I think that's, and honestly, in Florida, if you look at a lot of the stuff we've done, as much as the media, anything we do, they try to mischaracterize or whatever. But a lot of our biggest initiatives, we're getting almost unanimous support in the legislature, some of the things that we've done. So I think that somebody who is willing to work on those issues, and then of course within kind of more on our side, not every Republican is going to agree with me 100% of the time. But my 80% friend is not my 20% enemy. I want to work with them. I want them on the team for that 80%. I just think that's a better model of leadership. I think we want to bring as many people into the fold as you can. You don't water down your convictions. We're not going to do pale pastels. We'll lead with what Ronald Reagan called bold colors, but we're also going to do it in a way that's maximizing our ability to build coalitions and deliver results.
Absolutely. Casey, I want to ask you a question. Lynette and I found that we grow closest to the Lord in hardships, and it's always tough. And I know you had your bout with cancer. I know you lost, I believe, a brother early on. And how does, going through trials, what advice would you give to others that are fighting these battles right now? How does this help and grow your faith?
I mean, I think it's all about being rooted in faith and just having a strong understanding that, you might not understand why something is happening, but just believe and stay strong and do everything that you need to do to go forward. And that, like I said earlier, ultimately you can come out stronger than you could ever have imagined, like I said. And so, one of the things I've tried to do, particularly with the cancer battle in the state of Florida, is I was so blessed, beyond blessed during my difficult times, because people all across the United States literally were sending me letters and prayer verses and cards and have faith and stay strong and crosses, and it was overwhelming, to the point where I was like, this can't just be for me. There are a lot of other people out there who are struggling too, who really could use these words of wisdom, and that they could really use that faith to be able to pick them up, to give them the courage to persevere. And so we started an initiative in Florida, and there's a lot of components to it, but one of which is to be able to provide an avenue electronically for people to be able to pray for others who are suffering. And also, a lot of people who have been through stage 4, stage 3, stage 2, stage 1, to say, hey, listen, I got through it, you can get through it too. It's going to be difficult, it's going to be tough, have faith, you can get through it. And so that's one of the things that we've really tried to do, but just being strong and rooted in that faith was what really, when it was going through tough times, what I fell into, and it saved me.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Governor, before we let you close, I want to ask you about a campaign video you recently put out. It noted that you and Casey had spent many weekends visiting churches throughout the state and for the need to acknowledge the truth. What have you learned from your experience traveling and meeting with Iowa's faith community, and what do you mean by we must acknowledge the truth?
Well, I think it's been great traveling Iowa, partially because you really, when you're in a position of being an elected official or a candidate, you can get lost in kind of media narratives, you can get lost in some of the stuff that people put out there, but you got to get underneath that and actually talk to the people that you're seeking to represent. And so the concerns, and when people are telling you things that they're concerned about or asking you questions, a lot of times that's not what you're seeing in kind of bright lights out of some of the elite media organizations. So there's a lot of value in doing that, and especially here in Iowa, because people are invested in the process of the caucuses. I think you see a lot of just decency, patriotism, God-fearing people that really love this country and want to see the country succeed, and don't like what they're seeing with everything that's gone wrong, particularly over these last 3 years. So I come out of it with actually a lot of optimism, because I think the backbone of this country is reflected by the people that I've met in Iowa. And it's that backbone of the country, those values that are represented there, that are ultimately going to lead this country into a strong revival. And that's what we need. I mean, we need this country to be reflective of its best principles and best values. And if we do that, we will succeed again.
Thank you.
Values are so key. We have to get values and family back into society and what's happening. So as we've got a few minutes left, all right, I want you to think about, what is your closing message? All right, what is your closing message to Iowans? January 15 is right around the corner. Well, we got 5 weeks left, thereabouts. We're in the home stretch. What do you want them to know most about you? And I'll ask Casey if you could talk about your husband first.
How much time do we have?
Yeah.
I got a lot to say.
Yeah. But if you could just summarize, and then I'll have obviously the governor take it from there. But what do you want them to know?
I mean, there's so much. I mean, obviously he's a dad of a 7, 5, and a 3-year-old. I mean, I would talk about his military experience when he went through 2 very liberal universities, Harvard and Yale, but came out more conservative on the other side. And, he saw 9/11. He decided to commission as an officer in the United States Navy and serve and actually go over to Iraq because he wanted to give back and fight for our first principles. I mean, I can talk about the fights, and he's talked a lot about beating Disney, beating the teachers union, standing up for what's right, delivering on 100% of his principles, and everything that he said he would do for the people of the state of Florida. But if there is one thing that I really want you to know about Ron DeSantis, is that, and this is particularly highlighted during COVID, because the world descended upon Florida. I mean, the left was coming after him, the media was coming after him, Republicans in Washington were coming after him, the CDC, the NIH, and it was relentless, day after day after day. It wasn't just coming after him in one news cycle and then they were on to the next thing. I mean, they never let up with some of the worst things you could possibly imagine about somebody. But he held true to what he knew in his heart was right. He stood up for the children to be able to be in school. He made sure that people were able to work to put food on the table for their families. He made sure that families could be with their loved ones in the final moments of their life. I mean, on and on it goes. Businesses, I mean, these big businesses were able to stay open, but these little guys, they were getting pummeled across the country, but not in Florida. He held the line. And so I say this, what you want in a leader in Washington is someone who's going to stand up and fight for you no matter how hard they're getting attacked. You want somebody, as Rush Limbaugh said on his final radio show before he passed away, he said, Ron DeSantis has an ironclad spine of steel, and that is the God's honest truth. This guy will never waver, he will never back down, he will never give up, and he will stand for the values and the principles that made this country great. And that is why I am out here every day of the week and twice on Sunday fighting for him. It's not because I'm married to him, that has nothing to do with it, because I feel like I have an obligation from what I have seen of him in front of the cameras and behind the cameras when it's tough. And I mean, I'm turning on the TV and it's not nice, but he never wavered and he was a rock. And that is exactly who you want fighting for you at this moment in our nation's history.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That's passion. That is passion.
I'm just so proud of you.
I love it. I love it. Take us home, Governor. What do you want everybody to know as your final thoughts?
We need a strong 2-term president like Ronald Reagan. So after serving you for 2 terms, I'll be able to look back on that and tell you that we've restored the American dream in this country. You're not going to be held down by inflation, interest rates, excessive bureaucracy, Green New Deal. We'll fix all of that. I'll be able to tell you that we've restored the sovereignty of this country. Drug cartels are no longer going to be ruling the roost. We're not going to have massive amounts of fentanyls and illegal aliens pouring in. We're going to be able to say we've revitalized our nation's military, fended off the threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party, and that the 21st century is still an American century. We'll be able to say that our school systems are now educating kids but not indoctrinating kids, that the rights of parents are respected, and that there's been a new emphasis on teaching kids about American civics and what it means to be an American. We'll also be able to say that whether you live in a red state or a blue city, criminals are held responsible for their crimes. The inmates are no longer running the asylum, and that every family has a right to raise their kids in peace and security. And then we'll be able to say that we've restored the U.S. Constitution to its centerpiece in our national life. We'll have a limited government that works alongside us, not an unaccountable bureaucracy that's weaponized against us, that imposes its will on us. We will have held all the agencies responsible for COVID accountable. We will have ended weaponization of agencies like the DOJ and the FBI, and we will have ensured robust religious liberty all throughout the land. And we'll be able to say more, but if we can just say those things, then we'll be able to say that we've restored America to what Ronald Reagan called the shining city on a hill. We cannot be the first generation of Americans to leave to our kids and grandkids an America less prosperous and less free than the one we inherited. That would be breaking faith with every generation of Americans that have come before us. And so, as the only veteran running in this race, part of my motivation is we've got young kids and we're looking for the future, but I also am conscious of the debt of gratitude we owe to people throughout our country's history who've put on a uniform, risked their lives, and in some cases given the last full measure of devotion for service to this country. We're not doing justice to their sacrifices if we don't turn this country around. So as your candidate, I will get the job done next November like I did in Florida. As a leader, I'll always conduct myself in a way that you can be proud of. And as a president, you'll be able to count on me. I will not let you down. Thank you all, and God bless.
My wife and I want to thank you for coming to our home area. We're so blessed for you to come here, and you came for my picnic. We're so very grateful. We will see each other more on the campaign trail over the next 5 weeks, and we humbly ask that you continue to come here even as the caucus leaves our state, that you don't forget about us in Iowa, and if you become president, that you're always close to our heart, and that Iowa always will mean something to you, hopefully. So thank you so much.
God bless you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was fun.
Is that good? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, that was exciting. That was really good. Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, now I want to introduce another friend who I got to know about a year ago. I got to meet him, Pastor Binkley, at his work. I got to see his office and where he works. And I've just got to know him so well as a brother in Christ. And that's why I'm so excited for him to come. And I just want to tell you just a little bit about him. So Pastor Ryan Binkley is the president and CEO of Generational Group located in Richardson, Texas, with over 300 employees. His wife and him, Ellie, are also the founders of Create Church, a multi-ethnic, multi-generational church in Richardson, Texas. As he is the lead pastor, his deep passion is to see church members of all walks of life discover and live out their purpose. He holds a BBA at the University of Texas and an MBA from Southern Methodist University. Ryan and Ellie were married in 1999 and they have 5 children. They chose to adopt their youngest child from South Korea, where Ellie was born, before immigrating to the U.S. with her parents. It is one more way their faith has led them to reach across boundaries, finding unity where others might see differences. So please give a warm Northwest Iowa welcome to the Binkleys. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so much. It's great to be with you.
Welcome, Valerie. I think there's a mic on your chair.
So great to have you here. And I love your story about what happened. We met, it's interesting how you bump into people. We were in D.C. A couple weeks ago, and all of a sudden there was Pastor Binkley, and we had a great conversation together, and it was just wonderful to see you. And now to see your wife Ellie here in the wonderful state of Iowa, and this beautiful weather of Northwest Iowa that you're here, coming out of Texas.
It's just like this in Texas all the time, so I feel right at home. It's great to be here. Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, for those that don't know you two, could you just sort of introduce yourself to Northwest Iowa and elaborate sort of on your background and what got you here?
Wow. Okay, do you want me to start, Ellie? Okay, I'll start. So my name's Ryan Binkley. Many of you have heard of our campaign and our message, but many of you haven't. And I'm a CEO of a company that I co-founded with my dad, a family business, about 20 years ago. And we do merger and acquisition services for middle market companies. So we started helping business owners sell companies, and we created a model, and it took off real quick. And so now we have several companies, a growth consulting firm, a wealth management firm, a software engineering company, restaurants. We have a few things. And about 400 employees now across 16 offices across the nation. And we're pastors. So Ellie and I, we started in ministry as friends before we got married. And so we've always done ministry. We did young adult ministry for 17 years before we started our church about 10 years ago. And this is our life. 5 kids, 13 to 23. As you mentioned, we adopted our youngest. And, you know, God really spoke to our heart to enter this race for a message. And really the message was this, that America needs an economic revival and America needs a spiritual revival. And the time for that revival is now. It's time for something different in America. That's a little bit about us. Ellie, you want to say something?
Yeah, we were back at the Capitol a few months ago, and somebody asked me, you know, you have such a busy, full life. What are you doing? You know, why are you in this race? And immediately the first thing that came to my heart, and I shared, is that we're doing this for the next generation. You know, we don't have to look too far around our world to see that something must change. And Ryan and I believe that change is that we need God back in this country. We need godly leadership. And it's truly for the next generation, not just for our sons and daughters, but for yours and the grandchildren to come. This is the most beautiful, amazing nation in the world, even now. And as a first-generation immigrant, I am proof that the American dream is real, and that's why my parents immigrated. This past May marked 50 years of my family immigrating. And I asked my dad, I said, okay, how do you feel? So he's 93 now. And I said, how do you feel being here 50 years? And his first word was, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to this country. I don't take it for granted even now.
Wow, that's special. And we do truly live in a wonderful country. Yes, thank you for those words.
Yeah. Seeking the Lord's will has always been a priority for our family too. We want to be willing to go where God calls us and faithfully serve Him in order to bring Him all the glory and honor that He deserves. Often God needs to close doors sometimes, as you found out, and open new ones for us. I remember when Randy was running for Congress, and the Lord was asking me to make a career change, and our future was very uncertain at that time, and we were, not sure what we were supposed to do, but we felt the Lord, telling us, do you trust me and will you obey? And so, have there been times in your life that, you have felt God, leading you to new opportunities, and you talked a little bit, but maybe you could expand on, what was the what was the main decision that you decided, yes, we are going to, I am going to run for president?
Wow, okay, so this gets back to, these moments you're just talking about, God moments, or God shifts you. It's happened a few times in my life. I gave my life to the Lord in 1992. I was a wreck in college, but God came in and he saved me. And it was about 1995. I was all business after college, working with Procter & Gamble and Boston Scientific. And then I went on a mission trip, and I had one of those God moments. And the God moment was, I'm called to ministry. And so then I began to set the next few years of my life up for that. And when Ellie and I got married, we both ditched corporate America, got asked to come on staff at a church. We took about a 70% pay cut, I think. And then we both came on staff at a church doing young adult ministry, missions, inner city ministry in Atlanta. And then a tragedy hit my home. And I thought I would never put on a suit again. I thought I was going to be a pastor of missions the rest of my life. And that was just 24 years ago. And then my brother was killed by a drunk driver 22 years ago. And we prayed. He ran a small business with my dad in Dallas. And God spoke to us again, saying, this is part of your journey. You'll pastor again. And so we just kind of took that step. That's when I went back and got my MBA. Ellie's had similar moments, but God moments, the Bible says, I think in Ephesians 2, that we're his workmanship, we're his handiwork, and he's got a plan for us. And it's something he prepared long beforehand. And you know what we don't know beforehand? We don't always know the last chapter. But we know he has got something special, and we're navigating these journeys. And so it was about 8 years ago. I'm doing business life, our company's growing. We started a church, same kind of moments continued. And then God spoke to me. It came in several dreams, that a message for our country, run for office. I'm going to tell you something. And I was like, what is this? Are you serious? I mean, I was not a politician. I'm still not a politician. Thank God. I don't know that we need more politicians, but anyway, he began speaking to me about our country. And so those came over and over. I ignored them for a few years, and then it came just more clear, and that now's the time. And so that's how it came. And then we just kept following it. And I think just like, if you remember the Indiana Jones movie where they step out on the invisible bridge, if you remember that scene.
Gotta have faith.
This is what it feels like for us. We're walking on an invisible bridge, and sometimes not until we pick our leg up does that little next plank come down, but that's what it's felt like. And so we're walking this out for America, for you, for Iowa. I believe there's so much at stake, but I think it's a movement of faith because God wants to do something in America that's different. And that's what I'm hearing. There's something coming we're not ready for. And he's sharing with me some things about our budget, healthcare, families, faith, the hatred and division in our country, what he wants to change. But that's a little bit about it.
Thank you for sharing the story.
That is wonderful. Ellie, you got dragged into this with your husband. That's a big step. So obviously this is new to you. You're on the campaign trail. You have 5 children. So how does this play out? I mean, do you take your children with you periodically? Can you just tell us about your children, their ages, their activities a little bit? Just get to know your family a little bit.
Absolutely. So we have 5. Our oldest is 23. He just graduated from Baylor University this spring, and he's working on his MBA at SMU. We have a daughter who's about to be 22. She's a senior at Baylor also. She's doing marketing and PR. We have a sophomore at TCU, a daughter, and then 2 boys at home, a sophomore in 7th grade. So the way our family has always been is that, Ryan he's just such the leader that he gets a thought or something, that God is speaking to him about, and he'll share it with me if it's something really out of the blue like this 8 years ago. And he would talk about it, and I would be like, well, I haven't heard anything yet, okay? So I don't know. But over time, he never does anything that's really big without us being in agreement. And so we both pray, and I felt like I heard the Lord say, you know what, this is something I have for you. And once we have that, then we gather our kids, and we say, okay, we've got some big news, and we want you to pray, and how do you feel? And they are 100% on board. They are so excited about this journey. They are young adults, and they know, looking at this country, being on the college campuses, all the craziness that's out there, and they know themselves that God needs to be back. And so along this journey, over the summer, they traveled with us quite a bit. We traveled. I'll travel with him for some of the bigger events. But, you know, the joy in this journey has truly been meeting Iowans. I mean, I've never been to Iowa until this time, honestly. But we vacationed at Lake Okoboji this summer. It was so beautiful. And then just meeting people that love God, that love their country, that love their families. It's like kindred spirits. And so it's really been a home away from home. And I'm just so grateful that, you know, you have Ryan Binkley, who, you know, a lot of people look at him and go, you know, what qualifies you? You know, you've never had political experience. Who do you think you are jumping into this? And I say, you know what? Mr. Trump really broke that barrier. He had no political experience. He made the way. And now we have this man of God who truly has a vision from God. And I know we're about to be married 25 years on January 2nd. He has led us in this way, stepping out in faith. And I know that when he says, this is what God said, I trust that. He is a great leader. And so here we are following all 6 of us and 2 dogs. So it's an exciting journey, truly.
It's great to have your kids involved, right? I mean, it's great to have your kids. I don't know, I'm sure if they do different things on the campaign trail with you. As you noted, they come with you periodically, but it's so special.
Pastor Ryan, you've spent a lot of time in Iowa. Randy and I love it here. We're both born and raised here. We feel that Iowa's strong faith and family values, their work ethic, safe communities, and opportunities for the next generation make this an amazing place to live, work, and raise a family. So on the campaign trail, what have you found to be the key concerns of Iowans? And if you were elected president, how would you create solutions to these issues?
Wow. Well, the number one thing, you know, we've been to all 99 counties. We hit that about a month ago. So now we're going back and at some big events, a lot of small events. I mean, every pizza ranch, every single one, I think, coffee shop in town. I've eaten so many donuts. If somebody gives me one more big pecan roll, I don't know what I'm going to do. But anyway, because I've gained some weight here on this thing.
Have you had pizza?
Yeah.
Pizza ranch?
And all the fried chicken you can imagine. So anyway, I'm back now on a diet. But, you know, everyone, it doesn't matter who they are. There's a couple things that's really impacting us all, and I think we all know what it is. It's inflation. And how are we making it today? You know, on our very first trip here, we got off the plane and got to the hotel, and an Uber driver picked us up. And it's a young lady that had just got a job at John Deere, good job, but she was just getting out of the probationary time. And she's picking us up. She's been working full time for several months, but had to work 20 to 30 hours extra on her only days off to make it work. How many people do we know are having to do just that, take extra shifts? One of the biggest things I've enjoyed is speaking to young people as well, and college students. I've been with a lot of young Republicans. We were with Iowa State, just about 60 students just a few days ago. Most young people think this is normal. They don't know anything less. They haven't had an environment like we had 20 years ago. Right now, 50% of young people are having to come out of college and live with their parents. They think that's normal. It's not normal. When I got out of college, I had an apartment. It wasn't a huge salary, but I had an apartment and paid for it, and a car, and I had money left over each month. And now we're in an environment where it's because of our spending, Randy. We are spending $2 trillion in debt every year. We're going to be $50 trillion in debt in about 6 years. And so this is the reason I'm in this race. I'm an economist. I see things from financial. I'm not sure everybody, but I'm probably the only person that's still currently making payroll every single week for everybody. Vivek may be doing that. I'm not for sure, but I'm making payroll every week. We have a couple hundred volunteers at our church and that kind of thing. People's lives we see every day, they're struggling. And this thing that we're doing in the economy by printing so much money. By the way, would you like to have one of those printing machines, money printers? I'm checking in for you. But they don't trust us to have one, and I don't trust them to have one anymore, because what it's doing, it's causing the poor and the rich for the gap to get broader. People talk about the wage gap or the wealth gap between the poor and the rich. It's not because of tax codes. It's because we keep printing money, and the poor and the lower middle class pay the exact same that we do for food, shelter, clothes. Their rents go up, and it's eating away every dollar in their bank account. So I'm running for them, and I'm running for the next generation. I'm running so you can have the same opportunity that we had when we got out of college, that you could get an apartment. A few years later, you can get a house. That's in jeopardy today, and we're going to run to see this changed. And we actually put together a 7-year plan to do it, and so that's what I'm sharing. That's what I'm seeing. People are scared. They're going, are we going to get out of this? And how? And then what's the division, the hatred? It's not found here in Iowa, but we see it all over. And how are we going to end that?
So you bring up the debt, and obviously this is probably my most important issue right now. I mean, we are $34 trillion in debt. It's going to be on the backs of our kids and our grandkids. And if we don't resolve this, I mean, we are in a debt spiral, and it's going to be catastrophic.
Exactly
I mean,
right.
it's going to be extremely serious. So can you just explain, just very quickly, 1 minute, how do we get out of it?
Okay, there's a couple things we need to do. And people ask me all the time, Ryan, how are you going to balance the budget? Randy, we have a 7-year plan to do it. We run about 20%, 25% over budget. We're $2 trillion in debt this year. Here's how we'll do it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to tackle the #1 biggest expense in our budget, and that's healthcare. Many people do not know this, but it is actually about 20% of all GDP now. The U.S. government spends $4.5 trillion in healthcare alone, Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, all other subsidies. And here's the problem. Healthcare inflation is 40% higher than regular inflation for 20 years. 40% higher. Regular inflation is about 50% higher than wage inflation. So our wages over the last 23 years do not go up with inflation, and they do not go up with health care. I was in Osceola just a couple days ago meeting with a retired doctor in his 80s. He said, Ryan, in 1968, I started practice, and he goes, the charge to deliver a child was $100. $100. It's $12,000 today. The inflation number on currency is about $900. So at the same rate, a delivered child should be about $900 or $1,000, but it's $12,000 to $13,000 today. And by the way, if you want to pay cash because it's a broken system, they'll cut it in half for you. And it's the only thing that's that broken. It's corrupt in America. It's filled with monopolies. So first thing we'll do is get their waste out of healthcare. We have launched the first ever, I think, Republican-led healthcare plan for America that actually gets rid of monopolies, gets rid of waste, brings price transparency back. And when we do that, we can save probably 3 to 5% a year. Big Pharma, we spend twice as much on healthcare than any other nation in the world. Canada pays 28 cents on the dollar for drugs that we do. They can buy generics because Big Pharma pays off our lobbyists and politicians and presidents, by the way, and we give patent extensions 10 and 15 years longer. So what we'll do, we'll reform health care, we'll get rid of earmarks, we'll use wisdom, and you know what? We'll fight for America, and I'll communicate to America, just like this, what debt does. It destroys your savings account.
Ditto. I hear you 100%. I got to get you in front of Ways and Means. We got to talk about
Let's
health
go,
care.
Randy. I like
Absolutely. We got to get you to D.C. Lynette.
Yes, Ellie, in your introduction, you kind of talked about your background and as a young child, how you immigrated to America from South Korea. Could you just tell us a little bit about what your experience was like, and then what led you both to your decision to adopt a child from South Korea?
Yes, so my dad was the interpreting officer during the Korean War between General Trudeau and the Korean general on the ground. And that afforded him the opportunity to begin the immigration process. So he moved from Korea to Japan. He was in line for 15 years until his paperwork came up to the top. And even in Okinawa, he still worked for the U.S. Army. And so when he immigrated, I mean, he said, Ellie, and I have 2 older brothers, it is the land to fulfill the American dream. And when we moved, he said, we are Americans now. We're not going to let language be a barrier. I understand a little bit of Korean, but we didn't speak it in the house. So as we grew and really, getting just engulfed in the culture of America and the love for this nation had just anchored me. And then plus my dad was the first Christian in a family of Buddhists. There was a Presbyterian missionary that came and shared the gospel. And at 18, he converted. And so all that laid the foundation. But when they immigrated, they left me in Korea with my grandmother until I was 7 years old. So I did not know I had parents. I didn't know I had brothers until my grandmother passed away. And one day this woman appears at the house saying, well, I'm your mother and we're going to go to America. So I was like, wow, okay. So growing up in that, and then now, all these years later, we're married, and every time I would hear the story of adoption, I would just weep. And I felt like God was saying, Ellie, this is something that I have for you and Ryan. And when I would talk about it with Ryan, it was definitely something that he was all in for. And so I think even though I wasn't necessarily adopted, I still feel like, I could relate to, a child from Korea. And so that's what we did. We started, moving in that direction. And it has been the greatest joy. He is truly a Binkley and definitely such a gift to our family. But in that, as we look at this country and we look at the topic of abortion, this is something that is really huge on our hearts, is that we want to promote a culture of life. That not only is there a culture of life for the baby, but there's love and support for the mother that's in a point of crisis. We have to get into the foster system and just revamp it to where there are people of integrity, people of morals that are fostering these children, and then allowing adoption to be more affordable. Why does it have to cost $50,000 to go through adoption? If we can get churches and private charities and organizations and promote it as a culture, then when the woman is in crisis, a teenager or even a 27-year-old who's in crisis, their first thoughts will not be, oh my goodness, I've got to go to Planned Parenthood, because that is not health care. I'm going to go turn to the Crisis Pregnancy Center. I'm going to go to this church because I've heard that they really help women in need. And not just the women, but the men, the dads, that are asking for the woman, for the girlfriend, please don't do this.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we only got a few minutes left.
Yep.
We should get a question from a student yet if we can.
Okay. All right. We are going to... we have a question from Derek Vanderscaff. He's an agribusiness major. Derek, can you raise your hand? His question is, because the role of president is influential and representative of the United States as a whole, how do you plan on showing Christ in your day-to-day work?
How do I plan to what?
How do you plan on showing Christ in your day-to-day work?
I really see this, that's so much broken in our country, as we just shared, economically, but as Ellie talked about in so many ways, culturally. Right now we have a huge problem, and the Republican Party has a problem too, because we have a great poverty gap in America. Urban America is really struggling. You may know this, but the Republican Party lost 46 of the top 50 cities and biggest cities by population, and we don't really have a message for the poor. So I really think as president, one of the things I can do is obviously lead the fact where financially we can all have an even foothold. But I think we can also do a lot in owning our cities today. So Jesus' greatest message was this: love your neighbor. And I've been asking college students that hate politics anyway, because most of them really don't vote Republican either, would you join me in a movement to love your neighbor? Can you see a different movement in education? Because one of the visions I have for education is helping the most poor actually have an opportunity that many other people just don't have today, or they don't have today. And many of them are struggling in reading. For instance, 1 out of 6 blacks in urban America are reading at the 8th grade reading level. It's only about 40% across the board anyway, 50% reading and doing math proficiently. I want to start a volunteer movement with college students. I'm asking college students everywhere, would you join me in a movement? Would you give a few hours a week and donate it to the life of one child? And I think if we can show this and demonstrate this, I've been volunteering at my church for, in some way, 15 or 20 hours a week for a long time. We can give a few hours a week. We can change the culture of America. You can change the culture and the life of a child. And we do that, we can change the world. So I would just try and show this. Let's lead by example. Our daughter's doing this now. Catherine, she's helping just mentor a young child 1 day a week, just going and spending life. We can change the world if we do this. And I think it's just about seeing the unseen people. As president, I'm not running for just to be the president of the Republican Party. I'm running to be president of the United States of America. And we have such a fist fight between the right and left, and we need to fight against evil. But I do believe this: the world's wanting to see us healed. Abraham Lincoln said this. He said, the greatest danger that could come to our country is not going to come from China, elsewhere, and he didn't mention those nations, but abroad. But he said this: it's going to come from ourselves. we ourselves would be its author and finisher. So I would lead by example, to love the most hurting, the most vulnerable, see them, help them practically, teach vocational trades. Let's help them have an opportunity to see this, a true Republican alternative to socialism, because that's what they need. They need a true reason to see it, but we have to show them or it won't resonate.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for those comments. We got about 30 seconds left, so take us home. 30 seconds. Final pitch to Iowans for January 15. Why should they vote for you?
Iowa, I want to thank you, Randy, and thank you, Lynette, for having us here. Thank you, Iowa, for being the voice, I think, also for the unseen. You know, right now, there's a system out there trying to keep voices like this about an economic revival and a spiritual revival from being heard. And I really appreciate Iowans, because there's a lot of people out there in big media that doesn't want to hear it, and even some forces here in Iowa, some, not though Jeff Kaufman. I want to thank Jeff Kaufman. He's helped us out. He's helped get this voice out. Also, it's just time for Iowa to know that many forces are trying to keep your voice from being heard. When they try and raise levels of debate levels, I've got 81,000 donors. And so it's time to let the 81,000 people and the people of Iowa to hear, you know what, that we want to see something different in our country. And I'm really running for this reason. For the unseen people of America, to get our budget back in line, for do what we think is right on the border, a true plan for security, but also that meets the strict worker needs that we have, that does something different for America. So I'm asking you to hear it. I'm asking you to go to Binkley2024.com, check us out if you haven't heard from us, and follow us. Caucus for us, vote for us, share it with some friends. Say, I don't want the same old thing that I've had. If you're tired of the division, if you're tired of the debt, vote for Ryan Binkley. We need you, and we need your help. I believe in America. I believe in Iowa. I believe in this process, and I believe in you. And I believe that God has something special for our days ahead. It's going to take faith for us to do that, and it's going to take God. And I believe God has a great plan for our country.
Well,
God bless.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Pastor, for being here. Thank you. Thank you so much. There you go.
That was the best 30 seconds I've ever had.
Thanks for letting me go.
God bless you guys.
I always think it's interesting to hear different perspectives, right?
Right.
From the governor to now a pastor that's running,
Right.
and now we have an entrepreneur that we're going to talk to.
Yes.
This is so exciting. So.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about the next candidate that we will be welcoming onto the stage, Vivek Ramaswamy. He is an American business leader and a New York Times best-selling author of Woke Inc. Born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, he often recounts the sage advice from his father. He said, if you're going to stand out, then you might as well be outstanding. This set the course for his life. He was a nationally ranked tennis player and the valedictorian of his high school. He went on to graduate from Harvard with a biology degree and received his JD from Yale Law School while working at a hedge fund. Then he started a biotech company, and he founded Strive, which is an Ohio-based asset management firm. Vivek is married, and his wife is a throat surgeon and an assistant professor at the Ohio State University Medical Center. They live in Columbus, Ohio, where they are raising their 2 sons. Please help give me a warm welcome to Vivek Ramaswamy.
She's elsewhere in Iowa, but we got the little
Hello. Thank you so much for coming.
Good to see you. How are you guys doing?
Good, good. Hello, how are you? You sit with Dad? Yeah?
What is his name?
His name's Karthik. He's the older one. Karthik, yeah.
This is Karthik, people. Yeah. Karthik, his little son.
Am I supposed to have a mic? Or?
Yep, there's one on your
Right there.
Yep.
Can you sit here? Here's the mic.
That is awesome.
My wife reported was elsewhere, and she's doing a few events as well for the campaign across other parts of Iowa, but I brought Karthik with me today. So.
Hey, it's great to take your children with you. This is
It's
faith and family. It's all about family. So
we're enjoying it. We're doing it as a family, and it's
well,
good to be here.
Say thank you for coming to Northwest Iowa. I know you've been here many times.
It's good to be back.
Exactly. So it's just a privilege that we have you here and that you can make the time to do it. And you know what's interesting to me is you're 38 years old, decide to run for president. And I see that somewhat as refreshing as we have sort of 80-year-olds toward the top, right? And also we have somebody way at the end of the spectrum. Just tell me and my wife and the rest of us here, what pushed you at that age to say, you know what, it's time for me to run for president?
Yeah, I mean, I know I am young by standards of people who have run for president in the past. I'm the youngest person ever to run as a Republican, that's for sure. I mentioned this on the debate stage the other night when they asked about our favorite president, and mine is Thomas Jefferson. He was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence.
We would have never known that. 33.
33 years old. And he, mentioned this, among other things, he invented the swivel chair while he was at it. He felt like he needed to actually rotate to think, and I get that. But this guy just says, okay, I'm going to invent the swivel chair. And the funny thing is, when it came to the Constitution actually mentions patents. Jefferson was one of the fans of doing it because he was such an inventor. But anyway, I bring that up because there's a reason why these revolutions, these revivals, are often led by the next generation. I think it's going to take somebody whose best days in life are still yet ahead to see a country whose best days are ahead of itself. I do believe that, and I don't take that for granted. Every day we wake up is a blessing, and we don't take tomorrow for granted. But I hope they are for me, and that's the way I look at our country as well. And so, yeah, I come at this not as a politician. I had started, in your kind introduction, you mentioned I had started a biotech company. That was the first major company I started. Probably the thing I'm most proud of still to this day in my career is we developed a life-saving therapy for kids. Small number of kids are born every year with a genetic disease. 100% of them die by the age of 3 if they're untreated. And we worked on a therapy where a majority of those kids now live lives of a normal duration if they're treated. And that's an FDA-approved therapy. So that was my world. There was a series of events I've talked about in my book. After George Floyd died, there were BLM protests. I stood up against corporate America, taking sides in this. But I think that one of the things I did is look myself in the mirror and ask myself, look, I think that God puts each of us here for a reason. My faith teaches me we each have a purpose, and it's a moral duty to realize that purpose. And when I look myself in the mirror after we had our second son last year, had a deep conversation with Apurva, we've lived the American dream, right? My parents, her parents as well, they've come here with no money. We've gone on to found successful companies. Apurva's living her version of the American dream, saving lives every day. I am genuinely worried that that American dream isn't going to exist for our 2 sons and their generation unless we each step up and do our part. And for me, for a lot of reasons we can talk about, I think it's going to take a unique combination for who can lead this country forward. But among those, I think it is going to take somebody with fresh legs and from the next generation to do it. And that's a big part of why I entered this race.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you running. You bring a new perspective.
Yeah, we're, sorry that your wife wasn't able to come today, but we understand, she, like you said, she's busy helping you campaign, and she's trying to balance her work as a throat surgeon. And how have you two been able to manage your campaign, your careers, and your family? And maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about your son and your wife and your other son, too.
Well, I don't think he's spoken at one of these events yet, but do you want to say hi to everybody?
Want to say hi?
Mike? He's taking it. Understandable. That's good. Well, one of the things we learned early in this campaign is doing this as a family was the only way, right? I think as a father, my obligation is to my family. I'm not going to be shaken in that. And I think that that's part of what gives me my moral clarity, even in some of my views as it relates to the role of the U.S. president. One of the things is, just as I'm a father, my role is to my family. As your next president, if you all put me there, I think my sole moral duty is to our fellow citizens in this country. I think that in some ways, this relates to my view as a father, but it relates to my worldview and how I hope to lead this country as the president. You start with your family at home. That's the foundation. We're a citizen of this nation, the United States of America, not any other one. And I think it's our moral duty to look after our family as parents, It's our moral duty to look after this country as leaders, whether in Congress or whether in the White House. And then after that, we can turn to solving hunger in the Congo or wherever else it is that we're sending our foreign aid. And I don't say that disparagingly. Those things are important too. But your moral duty starts closest to home. And that's kind of my worldview, and that's the way I expect to lead this country as well. But anyway, that's one of the things we learned early in this campaign was that Apurva was put here for a purpose too. She's one of the best in the country at what she does. Many of the people she sees after being cancer survivors, they have not swallowed food for years. And she's one of the few people in this country who does the procedure, does a form of surgery that allows many of those cancer survivors to then eat normal food. And the reason why she's able to do that, she's excellent at what she does, but part of the reason is the healthcare system is so broken that it'll pay for all kinds of pill-pushing behaviors. It'll pay for all kinds of feeding tubes or other expensive interventions, but it happens not to pay often for the one set of procedures that actually allows people to live a better life. And so in her case, she often does that without taking payment. That works, thankfully, for our family because we've lived the American dream, but that doesn't work system-wide. But she's continued to pursue her calling, and she's here on the weekends as we're pursuing it together as a family. But that's one of the things I've learned is if you're each called by your purpose, you know, everything tends to fall into place, and so far we're grateful for the way it's worked out.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the Faith and Family Feenstra event, and we all have different faiths, and I want you to just talk about your faith and your upbringing, just so we can all understand what that means and what it means to you.
I appreciate that, Randy, and I appreciate it especially because sometimes I feel like that ends up being an elephant in the room at times in events. I'm Hindu, and that's not been a norm for U.S. presidents in the past, and so I acknowledge that. I think it's a good thing for us to be able to have an open dialogue about faith. So I'll tell you about my faith. That is what leads me to pursue this journey, is my faith. My parents instilled in me my faith from a young age, and though I left it probably for much of my 20s and late teen years, I definitely came back to it with conviction. My faith teaches me there's one true God, that He put each of us here for a purpose, that we have a duty to realize that purpose, that God works through us. We are His instruments. He works through us in different ways, but we're still equal. We're all equal because God resides in each of us. That's the core of my Hindu faith. And it happens that I went to Christian schools. So I went to St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati. And one of the things I learned is that actually those values were actually very familiar to the values I was educated in my time at St. X as well. My parents brought us up in a very traditional upbringing. I mean, they always taught us family's the foundation. Marriage is sacred. There's very traditional upbringing, between a man and a woman. That divorce is not some option you just prefer. That the good things in life involve a sacrifice. Abstinence before marriage is the way to go. That it's not just about this life. It's about an eternal life long after this life just here on earth. And so when I got to St. X and we read in scriptures class in 9th grade, we read the 10 Commandments for the first time. What do they say? One true God. Don't take His name in vain. Respect the Sabbath. Honor your parents. That was a big one for me. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Don't commit adultery. Don't covet. It didn't feel like I was reading those 10 Commandments for the first time. And that's certainly when it hit me that these values that I was raised in, they don't belong to Hindus. Just as they don't belong to Christians or Jews or anybody else, they belong to God. And I do believe those are the values this nation was founded on. But that's what we have to remember, is that it's not just about the laws we see on a piece of paper. This Constitution and everything else was made for a moral people. And one of the core teachings of my faith, I alluded to it before, is that we don't get to choose who God works through. God chooses who God works through. So later that semester at St. X, we get to the book of Isaiah. You may be familiar with some of the teachings coming out of that, but God chose Cyrus in that book. a Gentile all the way in Persia to lead the Jews back to the promised land. And so that's a core teaching of my faith, is that I believe that we each have our own God-given gifts. It's our duty to use those gifts to achieve good on this earth. And that's a big part of what led me to this journey as well. And we can, talk about what I think needs to be done in this country, but I would say it is my faith that led me to this journey, and we're very proud of that.
Well, thanks for explaining that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to ask you a question from a student here at Dordt. We have a question from Nicodemus Elliott, who is a nursing major. Can you raise your hand, Nicodemus? His question is this: as a Christian, I have an obligation to vote for candidates who are dedicated to rewarding what is good and punishing what is evil, as shown in Romans 13, verses 1 through 7. To do this well, you must have a strong subjection to God and the Bible as a moral compass. Since Christians are those who dedicate their lives to following Jesus as the exclusive means of salvation and restoration, what confidence can you leave us with that your campaign will work with the Christian vision to advance the kingdom of God in America?
It's a great question. And I don't know if the individual's here or not, but I'm grateful. This is an open conversation I think we need to be having. So we share the same value set in common. It's a different faith, but the values this country was founded on, those Judeo-Christian values enshrined in our Constitution, those are the values, not only was I raised in, those are the values we live our life by. And I think it has been a long time. Let's have some, it's a real talk question, and I love that. Let's have some real talk. I think it has been a long time since we have had a president who certainly I could look my two sons in the eye, and probably most Christian parents could look their kids in the eye and tell them in good conscience that I want you to grow up and be like him. That is the standard I want you to hold me to, because half of the job of the next president is reviving our national character. Half the job is policy, and we often go into depth on that, and we can. But half the job is reviving our national character. And so if you want a president, to the gentleman who asked the question, who's going to spread Christianity across this country, I wouldn't be the right candidate for that. For many reasons. But among them, I think, is that I don't think that's the job of the U.S. president. I'm not running for pastor. I wouldn't be qualified to be pastor, but I am running to be commander-in-chief and to be president. And that president swears an oath to the Constitution and needs to be grounded in the same values that that Constitution was written to protect. And that I can say that, will I stand for those values? You're darn right I will. And I think even more so, I think I am uniquely positioned to do it because we are in a religiously diverse country. And we should want people of every faith to still stand for those same values of family as the foundation, believing that God doesn't need to be a four-letter word in our culture, believing in yourself, believing that we are put here for a purpose, believing in the foundational values of the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. I think we want a president who's able to stand for that and reach more than just Christians or people of any one faith with those values in the United States. And so what I will say is that partly because I am young, partly because there are some things that are different about me than other candidates, an outsider, a person of Hindu faith, it is my special responsibility to make faith and family and hard work and patriotism cool again, actually, for the next generation. I think they're pretty cool. And I think that it's our job as leaders to do that. And I'm in this race in part because I think I can do that better than anybody else from traditional politics, better than anybody else in this race. And with that comes a special responsibility to actually do it. And so that's what I would say is I see a difference, and I think it's good for our country when we see a difference between the role of president and pastor, because there's a role for both in our national revival. And I think that the role of a president right now is to revive our national identity. I think we're missing our national identity as Americans. We have a shared national identity in this country. And then protect religious freedom in a way that we have not done well in the last 20 years, so that parents and pastors and teachers can step up and play their role as well. We're all going to have to play our part. and I'm going to play mine. So that's what I would say in response to that great question.
Thank you for that response.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I look at your son, and your son's going, Dad, are we done now? Are we done now?
I'm proud of him so
grateful.
far, but we'll see.
He's great. He's great. So I want to ask you something. I have four children, and you have 2 children. You know, the thing that really worries me, and I sit on Ways and Means, so I think about it every day, is our $34 trillion of debt that's on the backs of our children. Yep. I want to look at a president saying, what are we going to do? We got to solve this. I mean, we really got to. So what is your plan? And we're running slow on time, so just think through this.
And I'm sick of the lip service to this. I really am, because it's become a talking point. It's so trite. Yet we're not working with a lot of time, right? So I want to impart what I see as a deep sense of urgency here. If our interest payments on our national debt become the largest line item in our federal budget, we're done, because then we're in quicksand. We're about 5 years from that happening. That's where we are right now. So let's get serious and understand what that debt looks like. Everybody in this room has about $100,000 in debt on their shoulders that they didn't know they had. That's the national debt. But that's not quite it, Randy, even, because it's really the next generation that's going to bear it. I'm very happy to see people of the next generation here today as well on a Saturday morning. I'm pleased. But here's the news that they need to know. It's about $200,000 of debt on their shoulders that they didn't know they had. $7 trillion of that is due to 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that did not advance the American interest. I'm prepared to lay a stake in the ground and say that didn't advance America's interest when the Taliban is still in charge 20 years later, and when Iraq is still a broken country, vulnerable to Iranian incursion. I am worried that we're on the cusp of repeating some of those same mistakes again. I've said so unapologetically in places like Ukraine or elsewhere. So let's just learn those lessons of the past. Now let's get serious about buying down that debt. Pull the oil and natural gas, the gifts that God has blessed this country with. We could sell that into the market and buy down a good portion of our national debt. Minus the $7 trillion, buying down our national debt, now we're south of $20 trillion. This becomes a little bit more manageable relative to the interest payments on that debt as well. And then let's get serious, and I think now we need a CEO in the White House, a serious CEO. And I'll tell you how I've run my businesses. I've built multiple businesses from scratch, a multi-billion-dollar company. I led as CEO. I start with zero-based budgeting. I think we start with last year's budget as the baseline and then roll it forward. But last year's budget was based on the prior year's budget. The prior year's budget was based on the one before that, each of which was broken, and even in many cases, if we're being honest, captured by special interests. So what I want to do is bring zero-based budgeting, start with zero as the baseline, and then really build up and ask what's actually necessary. And if we're doing that, one of the things we'll realize is we need a 75% reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. I mean, the dirty little secret today, the people who we elect to run the government are really, thank you, should be the ones who are actually running the government.
Yes.
But today, and this is with full respect to people who are in your seat, they're not the ones who are actually pulling the levers of power today. It's the people who were never elected to those positions in that federal bureaucracy. And so one of the things I've said, this sounds like crazy talk for a second, but then I'm going to tell you why it's crazy is actually the status quo. We need mass layoffs, 75% of those people gone by the end of my first term. We're going to do 50% in the first month, and it's got to look something like this. If your social security number ends in an odd number and you're in the federal bureaucracy, you're out. And if it ends in an even number, you're in. Now, I can promise you if we do that on day 2, not a thing is going to break. The sun will still rise in the east and set in the west, and our federal bureaucracy will be half its size. But it has to be done that way, because this is what stops presidents. They say that otherwise you're going to get sued. This is what they told Trump. This is what they've told Reagan. You're going to get sued for political retaliation or for civil rights violations. Well, for mass firings, the civil service rules don't apply. And so president, and this goes back to even the first question about faith and purpose and why we're doing this. I think it takes a president now who on one hand is going to come from the outside with sharp elbows, willing to break some glass and get that done. And Trump brought that, and I bring some of that. But it will also take a president who has a deep understanding of the law and the Constitution of this country. And as somebody who's hired thousands of people in the businesses I've built, and the career I've built, is those two skills don't usually go together, right? Usually you'll have the academic law professor type over here, but they're not going to be able to execute and get it done. You might have the sharp-elbowed business guy, but might get duped if you don't understand the actual law and the Constitution. And that comes back to that sense of purpose I talked about. I think God put each of us here for a purpose, and it's our duty to realize that purpose. And that's really what led me to this journey. If there's one thing I get done, we will shut down that shadow government in the deep state by the end of my first term. And that much I'm confident we can do.
So we got just a couple minutes left.
Okay. As president, you would face many challenges. We see a barbaric war perpetuated by Russia, tourist attacks in Israel, China on the rise, an open border, crime rising here at home. History teaches us about the rise and falls of nations as well as the rise and fall of rulers. If you were president of the United States, how would you help our nation maintain a firm foundation of economic security and moral stability?
So I think we could spend a whole day, and that's not what today's about, on economic policy, foreign policy, and I've laid that out elsewhere. But I want to go a layer deeper here. There's something that's upstream of both of those challenges. We are in the middle of a national identity crisis right now. If you ask people my age, the age of many people who are in the front row here, what does it mean to be an American today? You get a blank stare in response. It's like a deer in the headlights. That is the vacuum. That is the void in this country. Right? At the same time in our history, the things that used to fill that void, faith, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared, only to be replaced by, and then you could fill in the blank, right? Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, depression, anxiety, fentanyl, opioids, suicide, whatever it is. These are symptoms of a deeper void of purpose and meaning in our country. And I think that, so I'm an America First conservative, right? I'm proud of that. I don't apologize for that. But to put America first, we now live in a moment where we have to rediscover what America is, right? What does it mean to be an American? What are the ideals that set this country into motion in 1776? I brought up Thomas Jefferson before. I think we live in a 1776 moment right now. And once we answer who we are, what are those values? Meritocracy, the pursuit of excellence. That means you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character. We unlock this economy and says, you know what, we'll drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear, put the best people in the job rather than somebody based on their race or their gender. We'll actually stop paying people more money to stay at home instead of to go to work. Great, there's our economic solutions right there. We'll say that we will stand strong and protect our own homeland, that a nation without borders is not a nation, because who we are is we're founded on the rule of law. That's what I'll use to put the military on the southern border and the northern border. So in some ways, for me, these aren't slogans, and I think most of us in this Republican Party, thankfully, agree on a lot of those sensible domestic policies. But I think we live in a moment where we have to connect that to the why. It's not just because we're solving, oh, we have this economic challenge, let's solve that, and then play whack-a-mole with our border crisis over here. We're not going to get to the root cause unless we realize what's really going on is we have lost our sense of who we are as Americans. I mean, our generation, we have been taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans. I mean, I brought a different shade of melanin today. Okay, great. So what? If there's nothing greater that unites us across that diversity, that's the job of the next president, is to answer what are those shared ideals that unite us, the ideals enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And then our economic policies and our foreign policies follow from that. But once we fill that void, that's how we actually drive change in this country. And I do think that's going to take someone from the outside, from the next generation, to lead us actually something, to our vision, and that's why I'm in this race. And so thank you for the good conversation today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming today. I so much appreciate you bringing your son today. I mean, it's special. So I look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail. We have 5 weeks left, and
I'll just say one thing in closing, because we had a lot of dour topics, and I heard the great discussion you had with Ryan before as well.
About 30 seconds.
Sure. The one thing I want people to take away is we don't have to be that nation in decline. I think as a nation, we are really still just a little young, actually. And I think we can still be a nation in our ascent. So on one hand, I'm not going to be the person who tells you it's morning in America, because it's not. But I think it can be. And I think it's going to take a leader who both sees the present hour for what it is. The hour is late, but it's not done yet. And I think with that, I do think that our nation's best days for the next generation can still be ahead of us. And I want to thank you guys for doing what you do every day.
Thank you for coming from Northwest
Thank
Iowa.
you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. How are you? It's good. You're a cool kid, eh? Hey, I tell you what, we're down to our last candidate. Again, I hope we're learning some things. To me, this is such a wonderful thing to hear this back and forth of what's going on. So our last candidate, we all know, Ambassador Nikki Haley, and she's with her daughter, Rena, today. And let me just give you a little bit of background about Nikki. Ambassador Haley has been born in Bamberg, South Carolina in 1972. She was one of 4 children and the only Indian American family in town. So she was already an outsider when she was little. But Nikki's mom would always say this to her, not to show everyone that she's different, but how she is the same. And she would always hear from her mom that this is the best country to ever live in. In 2004, she was elected South Carolina State House. In 2010, she was elected governor of South Carolina. She was the youngest governor at that time and the first minority governor to be elected. Nikki Haley also has a wonderful husband from Clemson. They met at Clemson University. Michael, a combat veteran, was deployed in Afghanistan in 2013, making Nikki the first governor of the U.S. history to have her spouse deployed. Michael is currently deployed overseas for a year-long mission. Haley has been married 26 years and has 2 children, Rena and Nayland. So let's give a warm welcome to Ambassador Nikki and her daughter, Rena. Great to see you, Ambassador.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So you and I have seen each other a lot over the last 6 months. And it's so great that you're here and that you brought Rena. This is the first time I've met Rena. So.
It's great to have her here. She's here with her husband, Josh. They're newlyweds. They just got married. But, to be back here, I'm glad she could see Iowa. Yes. My son, Nayland, he's a senior at college, and so he's in the middle of exams. That's why he's not here. But he got to come for the state fair. And he fell in love with Iowa. I mean, he really did. So it's fun. Now she finally gets to come and see it too. But it's cold outside. I can't believe how cold it is. This is not South Carolina at all.
Well, I got to tell a little story about you. One of the first times I met you, so this was, a year and a half ago, Ambassador came to Northwest Iowa. And what do we have in Northwest Iowa? We have hogs, right? We have cattle, we have hogs. So Nikki comes to me and goes, Randy, I want to take a picture of a hog. I said, you don't know what you're asking for. And she goes, no, I want to do it. So we went into a hog confinement. She took a picture with a hog. And then the next hour, she goes, Randy, I stink like hogs. It's like, that's money. That's the smell of money. So, but she wanted to get that
I think
done.
that smell was on me for like 2 days.
We all know the feeling, trust me. So again, welcome.
Thank
you. And I just want you just to take 2 minutes to reintroduce yourself to the people from Northwest Iowa. Tell them why you're running, what it's about, and then if we could pivot over to your daughter, and she could just tell a little bit about yourself, what activities and what work you do.
Well, first of all, it's great to be back here in Iowa. You know, I mean, I grew up in a small rural town, 2,500 people, 2 stoplights. You couldn't think about doing something wrong without somebody telling your mom. South Carolina, the area I grew up, is much like Iowa. I grew up playing on a cotton field and in a dairy farm. And so, but it was very much about families taking care of families. You know, even if it wasn't your child, people treated it like it was your child. And you know, you learned to love each other and take care of each other. And now in a time where our country is in disarray, whether it's the economy and the inflation that's squeezing people hard, whether it's the fact that only 31% of 8th graders in our country are proficient in reading, whether it's crime that we're seeing on our streets, or a border that's open and so irresponsible that it only takes one person for us to have another 9/11, or whether it's the fact that the world is on fire. You know, we have to get this right. It's so important. We have a country to save. And we need to get back to that love of faith and family and country again. And I know we can do that. I believe it. America has an amazing ability to self-correct. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to know where up is, and we're there. Now we just have to look up and make it happen. But it's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Rena, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Rena. I graduated from Clemson in 2021. Just recently got married to Josh in April.
And he played for Clemson, right?
He did.
And he was on the national championship team?
Yes, he was. And so we met at Clemson, got married in April, and then I became a pediatric nurse. It is a very tough job, but also a very rewarding job. We don't see the best of things there, but knowing that we're helping people is, you know, really important and really special to me. So.
You know, and I'll tell you, I'm so proud of her because when she was 3, in her preschool, they did that, what do you want to be when you grow up? We have the picture of her holding it up saying, when I grow up, I want to go to Clemson and become a nurse. And the fact that she is, but she works at the Children's Hospital, so she takes care of anywhere from newborns all the way to the age of 18. And it is truly God's work in a way that you are caring for people that have been through so much. And I'm just so proud of like her heart and her faith and her ability to take care of these people. And, you know, I still see her in pigtails. So the idea that she's an adult and, you know, she married such a good man. I mean, if it wasn't cute enough that she's a pediatric nurse at the Children's Hospital, he's an elementary school teacher. And so the two of them are very sweet, but we're so proud of them.
That's great to hear. That is so awesome. And you know, my son and daughter, my son just got married, so I can relate to what's going on in your life.
Yeah. Ambassador Haley, we have enjoyed watching your campaign across Iowa and in the debates. Today we're here to talk about faith and family. We're honored to have your daughter join you, and these issues are so important to the future of our country. How do they inform your leadership style? And how will you ensure our Christian values are at the forefront of a Haley administration?
I strongly believe in faith and family and country because I've lived it. You know, I was thinking back, somebody asked me recently about what was a moment where I felt like faith really carried me. And you'll remember we had that horrific shooting at Mother Emanuel Church. And here was 12 people did what so many in South Carolina do on a Wednesday night. They went to Bible study. But on that night, someone else showed up. He didn't look like them. He didn't act like them. He didn't sound like them. They didn't call the cops. They didn't throw him out. Instead, they pulled up a chair and prayed with him for an hour. And when they bowed their heads in that last prayer, he began to shoot. These were people like Ethel Lance. She would go around Mother Emanuel Church cleaning, but her daughter had died 2 years prior of breast cancer, and she had a broken heart. But she would go around the church singing, "One day at a time, sweet Jesus, that's all I ask of you. Give me the strength to do every day what I have to do." Our youngest victim, Tywanza Sanders, just finished college, had the world in front of him. But on that night, he stood in front of his 87-year-old great aunt Susie and looked at the killer and said, "You don't have to do this. We mean no harm to you." Or it was people like Cynthia Hurd, whose life motto was simply to be kinder than necessary. And when that happened, it brought South Carolina to her knees. And the national media came in because this was on the heels of Ferguson, and they wanted to make it about race, and they wanted to make it about gun control, and they wanted to make it about all these other issues. And I strong-armed them and said, there will be a time and place where we can talk about those things, but right now we have 9 souls we need to lay to rest. We didn't have the luxury of that because the killer's manifesto came out 2 days later, and he was draped in the Confederate flag. And the Confederate flag is very personal in South Carolina. It stood right in front of the State House. It used to be on top of the State House. They moved it to the front of the State House in 2000. And half of South Carolinians saw the Confederate flag as tradition and heritage. The other half of South Carolinians saw it as slavery and hate. This wasn't about me judging either side. It was getting me to get them to see the best of themselves and go forward. And you know, when he came out with the manifesto, I called for the Confederate flag to come down. And I called for 4 meetings. I told my staff, I said, I want 4 meetings. I wanted Republican leadership, Democrat leadership. I wanted the congressional delegation, and I wanted community leaders. And I said, don't tell them why I'm calling, because I knew they wouldn't come. And when they showed up for their meetings, I said, at 3 o'clock today, I'm going to ask for the Confederate flag to come down. And if you will stand with me, I will forever be grateful. And if you won't, I won't tell anyone you were ever in this room. And I had my husband Michael with me because I thought he was going to be the only one standing with me at 3 o'clock that day. But that's not what happened. We had Republicans, we had Democrats, we had whites, we had blacks stand up there. But that was the easy part. In order to bring it down, it took 2/3 vote of the House and Senate. It was a tough process. But at the end of it, we didn't have violence. We had vigils. We didn't have protests. We had hugs. And we showed the entire world what strength and grace look like. But the part that made me come to that was that happened on June 17th, 2015. On June 13th of 2015, I had called for a state day of prayer, a day where we were asking South Carolinians to come together to pray for our country, which felt like it was in crisis. And we had thousands of South Carolinians fast, pray, come together. And I just think, and I took a lot of criticism for it. Everybody said, as a governor, I should never call for a state day of prayer. It was, it was not good. It was evangelicals coming together. And I mean, I really took a lot of heat. But looking back, I truly believe that state day of prayer was preparing us for the tragedy that was going to happen. And I think it's what saved us at the end of the day, because I think it really pulled the hearts of South Carolinians. It was the first time in our country we had had a shooting in a place of worship, and I saw God in that. And I think you never know what tomorrow is going to bring, but that faith and that readiness is so incredibly important for what we have ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's very special. I want to talk about our children. I have children exactly your children's age, and I worry about our national security. What's happened, we saw in Israel. My wife and I were in Israel several years ago. We were at a kibbutz. We actually knew some of the people that lost their life, and it was very personal. I bleed. My heart bleeds for what happened there. And we see what's happening in Russia, and I should say Ukraine and Russia, and then we see China, we see North Korea, and I fear for what my children will see 20, 30, 40 years down the road. How do we protect our country from the tyrants of Putin and others?
America has to get this right. I mean, God help us if we don't. What is frustrating for me is I hear what's coming out of D.C., and they're saying, do we support Ukraine or do we support Israel? Do we support Israel or do we secure the border? That's such a false premise. Our job is national security. It's to protect Americans, but more importantly, to prevent war, right? Because if we can prevent war, we can protect Americans. And I look at what happened in Ukraine, and here is a pro-American, freedom-loving country who was invaded by a thug, and 500,000 people have died because of Putin. I don't think we should give cash to any country. Ukraine's not asking us to put troops on the ground. They want to do this themselves. But dictators always do what they say they're going to do. They're actually very transparent. Hamas said they were going to invade Israel. They did. China said they were going to take Hong Kong. We watched it. Russia said they were going to invade Ukraine. It happened. China says Taiwan is next. We better believe them. Russia has said when they take Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. Then we are at war. We're trying to prevent war. So the key is give them the equipment and ammunition to win. Now think about if Putin had hit rock bottom, which he did, raised the draft age in Russia to 65, getting drones from Iran, getting missiles from North Korea, they were losing. What did their partner Iran do? Hamas invades Israel and has that horrific brutality on Putin's birthday. Putin didn't call Netanyahu. He invited Hamas to Russia. And what happened? The happiest person in the world right now is Putin, because what did America do? Shift their eyes from Ukraine and put it on Israel. Then you look at what happened in Israel. There would be no Hamas without Iran. There would be no Hezbollah without Iran. There wouldn't be the Houthis without Iran. It has never been that Israel needs America. It has always been America needs Israel. Israel is the tip of the spear when it comes to defeating terrorism. When they beheaded those people and burned those babies and raped those girls and dragged their naked bodies down the streets of Gaza, what did they say? Death to Israel, death to America. Now, if we just took care of Ukraine, it would be 3% of our defense budget. The Europeans have paid more, and they should. It's their neighborhood. If we took care of Ukraine and Israel, it would just be 5% of our defense budget. If we took care of Ukraine, Israel, and closed the border, and by the way, closing our southern border is priority job number one. If we did all... America right now is acting like it's September 10th. We better remember what September 12th felt like, because it only takes one person, and you've got thousands crossing that border. So closing our borders, job number one. If we took care of Israel, Ukraine, and the border, that's less than 20% of Biden's green subsidies. So don't let them tell you that you have to pick. What we pick is national security. What we pick is keeping Americans safe. What we pick is preventing further wars. That's what we do. And so that's really the message that we have to understand is On September 12th, we needed a lot of friends. You have to be a friend to get a friend. We need to make sure that America's never so arrogant to think we don't need friends, because we do.
Thank you. Ambassador Haley, we're so happy that Rena's here, and we have a question for you, Rena. What's it like to have your mom running for president? How does she keep connected with you while she's on the campaign trail? And then maybe just give us your pitch about why you think she would be the best candidate for a party to run for president of the United States.
Sure. So my dad was recently deployed, and so he used to always be that person for her in the front row at all of her debates. And so recently I took on that role of being that person for her in the front row. I know you probably won't see it on TV, but she'll smile at me, I'll smile back at her, I'll give her a thumbs up, help her keep that energy going. And so that's been really special because she's always been so supportive of me and my brother. Coming to my track meets, my cheerleading stuff, Nayland's basketball games. And so I think the most special thing of all of this is being able to support her like she's been able to support me. And so that's what I've been taking on. Nayland's been taking on $5 Friday, which is donating $5 every Friday and sending out a message to supporters. And then
Those are, Michael was doing the $5 Fridays, and on Fridays there's an email that goes out. It would be from Michael talking about me, just telling something about me that they didn't know. So Nayland has taken on the $5 Fridays. So he now tells stories about me and asks for the $5 Fridays. And so now Michael and Nayland stay in touch and compete for who's doing better on the $5 Fridays.
And then, yeah, it's just been really fun. It's still been normal. It's different in the way that it's definitely busier, traveling a lot, but we've always been a very close family, and I feel like this is really a testament to that because I meet her wherever she is, she'll meet us where we are, and so we've still very much valued family and making that time still.
That's great, Neil. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask a question from one of the Dordt students here. I know this is important to both me and you. We are against earmarks and you name it. It comes from Jonah Hoffmeyer, who is a digital media major. Jonah, can you raise your hand? Are you around, Jonah? There he is right there. All right, Jonah, thanks for the question. His question is this: how do you plan on reeling in American spending? And how do you plan to work with Democrats to do this on this issue? And we have to. I mean, it's almost bipartisan, so we've got to figure this out.
So first, can I say, do you know how blessed you are to have Randy Feenstra fighting for you every day? Mainly because he's normal, right? Like, that's what we want. We need normal people serving, you know, in Congress and in our country, like not politicos that this is what they live, eat, and breathe every day, but people who have families, who have a faith, who understand the price of a dollar. And I will tell you, I love that Randy hasn't been taken by DC. He hasn't kind of fallen into that mission creep that happens. You talk about our budget situation. The accountant in me, don't you think it would be good to have an accountant in the White House? The accountant in me sees how out of control the spending is. $34 trillion in debt. We are having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. China owns some of that debt. And while it's easy to blame Biden, and he sent us down this socialism creep that is dangerous that we have to get out of, our Republicans have done that to us too. I mean, look at the $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that passed with no accountability. We now have 100 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. That's a third of our country. And did Republicans try and make it right? No, they opened up earmarks and pet projects for the first time in 10 years, pushing through 7,000 of them last December. Now, I want to say Randy Feenstra does not ask for any of these earmarks or pet projects, and I thank you for that because that's really important. But in all of that, in the 2024 appropriations budget, Republicans asked for $7.4 billion worth of those pet projects and earmarks. Democrats asked for $2.8 billion. So who are the big spenders? And these are things like $30 million on an honors college in Vermont, $10 million to tear down a hotel in Alaska, $7.5 million on a courthouse in Colorado, and the list goes on. All while 1 in 6 American families can't afford their utility bill. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of American families can't afford diapers. So the focus really is, when I become president, we will stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we will eliminate the earmarks, and I will veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. That will save us trillions. The next thing is we need to open up the middle class. We are watching the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And the way we do that is we will eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. And we'll cut taxes on the middle class, and we will make the small business tax cuts permanent. They made the corporate tax cuts permanent, but they made the small business tax cuts temporary. When we make the small business tax cuts permanent, that's the heartbeat of our economy. And then you're really getting to where we need to go. But, you know, everybody's always like, well, how are you going to go and do those cuts? The tone at the top matters. And I will do, as president, what I did as governor. One of the first things I did was I replaced the head of every agency. And I put, whether they were doing a good job or not, and I put someone new to freshen it up. The second thing is I sent people, teams, into each agency to clean it up. Pull down bureaucracy, pull down old regs, get rid of problem children. And then I gave them 90-day benchmarks that they had to prove every 90 days to show the taxpayer a return on investment. And then finally, I saw agencies were spending because they were worried they weren't going to get the same amount of money the next year. So I put all of the spending online for everybody to see. And then I incentivized them to start giving money back to the taxpayers. And magic happened. They started to compete. Once I set the tone at the top there, then I went to my legislature and said, your turn. We will go to Congress and at first give y'all a couple of things that are easy and remind them what it's like to win again. And then start pushing the harder things. We can do this, but they need to know their purpose. They need to know how it helps everyday Americans. That's how we'll do it. But you start yourself by showing you're really ready to make the hard decisions, and then you go forward.
And that's the key. We got to make hard decisions.
That's right.
It's got to be done.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So, Ambassador, as we approach January 15th, what is your closing pitch for Iowa voters? What makes you the best candidate for our party to beat Joe Biden?
You know, I think the fact that the country is in disarray. You know, we see it with the budget out of control. We see it with education where parents don't feel like their kids are caught up. We see it with crime on our streets or a border that's irresponsible, reckless, and dangerous. We see it with our world on fire. So there's chaos all around us. But what I know is you don't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. And that's what Donald Trump gives us. Rightly or wrongly. I strongly believe that Donald Trump was the right president at the right time. I think he broke the things that needed to be broken. I agreed with a lot of his policies. I had a great working relationship with him. But rightly or wrongly, chaos follows him. You know I'm right. Chaos follows him. And we can't have a country in disarray and a world on fire and survive this chaos. And so we have to have a new generational conservative leader. And in order to do that, we've got to acknowledge some hard truths. Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president. That's nothing to be proud of. We should want to win the majority of Americans. That's how we'll get there. When we do that, that's when you start to be strong and proud again. Go back to our national purpose and the values that made this country so great. You know, someone asked me when I announced why I was running. And I said, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunities. I want them to know that country again. I'm doing this for my husband, Michael, who's overseas serving, and the men and women in the military. They need to know their sacrifice matters. They need to know that we love our country. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. And I'm doing this for my son who's a senior in college. And I am tired of watching him have to worry about writing papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. For the first time, 81% of Americans don't think their kids are going to live as good of a life as we have. We can't be okay with that. We have a country to save. But I'll promise you this, if you join with me in this fight, I know that our best days are yet to come.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you so much. You did great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So thankful for you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your husband, too. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to thank all of you for coming today. So what we did is we listened to the possibilities of what we have for leaders of our country. That's step one. Step number two is we have to deliver, each one of us. We have to, January 15, go to caucus and decide. It's our civic duty, and it's what we're called to do. I'm a reformer. Reformers believe that every square inch needs to be redeemed. And that also starts with government and politics. And that's our goal. So I want to leave you with this. When you think about what to look at, and we all know, but what we need to look at is start thinking of the fruits of the Spirit. Who possesses them? What can they do? Galatians 5, 22, 23. But the fruits of the Spirit are this: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That shows who a person is. So with that, I again thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much again for coming. I would like to close this time with prayer. And if you could join me, those of you who would like to join me in saying the Lord's Prayer, we'll be reciting the King James Version, but whatever version you'd like to say would be just fine. So if you, go ahead and stand, bow with us as we close in prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Thanks again, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Well, you can tell who's from Florida, the one that forgot their sleeves.
We've seen a lot of each other over the last year, and really got to know him. He did my family Feast Your Family picnic in May. Then it was a little warmer, a little different weather, but now you're seeing what Iowa all has, right? I mean, the warm weather to a little cooler today. So.
Well, we were in Sioux City. We flew in late last Friday night. Saturday morning, we had our three kids, a first grade kindergartner, pre-K, Florida born and bred, had never seen snow before. So they wake up at 5:30 in the morning, look out the window, they see snow, and all of a sudden, you know, Katie barred the door, they wake up their mom and dad, and they had to go out there and do it. So they've now been able to throw some snowballs, hit me, hit their mother, and they told me, they're like, Daddy, you know, we like the snow better than the beach. And I'm like, oh, so that means you don't want to live in Florida anymore? They're like, no, we want the snow in Florida. I'm like, it doesn't work that way, kids. You got to make a choice.
Well, they could come and live here if they wanted to, right? Well, I just want to talk, obviously, this is our Faith and Family event. And I want to just ask you, you know, growing up, both of you, what did your faith and family mean to you? And how does that apply and shape how you serve our nation and serve your state?
Well, for me, faith in God is really the foundation of how I live my life, but also how I conduct myself in an elected office. When you're doing what's right, when you have your compass set to true north, every single day in this process, media, opposition, everything, it's all designed to push you off course. It's all designed to divert you from being able to achieve what you're looking to achieve. And so having that foundation of faith in God is really what keeps you centered and what allows you to keep that compass set to true north, especially when you're dealing with things where you're taking a lot of incoming. I mean, during COVID, we had to take a stand in Florida. We believed, contrary to the Faucis of the world, that kids should be in school, that we should have the businesses open, that we should be not forcing people to take these vaccines. And we got pilloried for doing that. And a lot of people said you're making mistakes because you're getting hammered. But you know, you got to kind of look beyond that moment. And you got to know that ultimately God has a plan for this, and let the chips fall where they may. I don't know that you're able to do that if you don't have that foundation of faith in God. So when people ask me about, hey, what do you recommend in terms of leadership? Well, what should people think about? I think there's a lot of things, but what I tell people, first, put on the full armor of God.
I think that that's so true. And you know, our daughter the other day had a homework assignment, and it was to memorize Ephesians 6, 10 through 18. And I don't think that that was a coincidence, because he invokes putting on the full armor of God, the belt of truth, and the shield of faith. And, you know, I think that everything that we do, and particularly for me when I was going through some pretty significant health challenges, having that foundation of faith, knowing that I'm not in control, that there is a higher being, gave me the ability, plus having a really great husband who helped me every step of the way through 6 rounds of chemotherapy, 3 surgeries, and 6 weeks of radiation. But having that foundation really gave me the strength. And another thing about my faith, going through what I went through with my medical problems, you know, I never would have thought that I would have come out stronger on the other side. I don't think that there's a lot that I would be able to do today had I had not gone through a lot of that. And I would never wish what I went through on anyone. It was awful. But it's amazing that the Lord really works in mysterious ways to put you in positions to be able to accomplish things He ultimately wants you to do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we appreciate your thoughts on that. And Casey, we're just really thankful that you are able to come today with your husband, and we appreciate your willingness to sit down and visit with us. We know you have 3 small children, and being on the campaign trail is definitely a sacrifice for your family. Randy and I, like many families in our community, we keep very busy with our work, our kids' activities, and so we need to really, prioritize to make time with the family, spend time together making meaningful conversations, make sure you take the time to sit down with them, pray, read the Bible, attend church. So I know that is very important to the people of Iowa too. So Could you tell us what it's been like balancing your family life while campaigning and then fulfilling your duties as governor and First Lady of Florida?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm happy to do it. So this is one of the rare exceptions where they are not with us right now. They usually are with us wherever we go, and we feel that that's very important. Not only do we want to spend time with them, clearly, because if there's one thing that people say to me wherever I go, they say in a blink of an eye, they're going to be in college. Enjoy it. It goes fast. And so we want to be with them, but also this is an opportunity for them to understand what we're fighting for. We're fighting for their future, their ability to be able to accomplish the American dream, and really to understand our system, where our rights come from. They come from our Creator. The government's put in place to protect the rights that we innately have. It's never too early to start empowering our kids to understand they're the next generation that's going to inherit this republic. So they need to have a good foundation, and we do that. And so, it's funny with our son. He is the biggest Ron DeSantis fan you have ever met in your entire life. And so he's in kindergarten. So, you wonder when you're talking to your kids about the importance of the election and the importance, what dad is fighting for. And he will watch every debate. He will watch, interviews on YouTube. And so again, you wonder, how much do they really resonate? He's in kindergarten. So one day I'm walking down the hallway and Mason looks at me and he goes, "Mama?" I'm like, "Yeah, buddy." He goes, "Our nation is in decline." And I said, "Why, yes, that's accurate. It's true, Mason." But it's true. And on a funnier note, he was watching, so this is just a side note. He loves football. Green Bay, it doesn't matter. He loves the Jaguars. He loves the Bucks. I mean, you name it, he will watch, and he loves football scores. So no matter, he's always trying, he'll write them on a board, and he'll tell you the day after. He's better than Siri. He'll tell you who played Thursday Night Football and what the score was. And so there was a debate the other day against Gavin Newsom and, of course, and Ron. And so he was asking, he goes, "Did Dad win?" I go, "Yeah, buddy, Dad won." And he goes, "What was the score?" And I was like, we couldn't even count it. It was so good. But no, we enjoy having them with us. These are very special times, and it's a blessing. I'm not going to lie. It's a little crazy, though.
Well, I think so we've done events in all 99 Iowa counties, which is important. It's an important thing to do. And I would say our kids have been with us for clearly a majority of the 99 counties. And it's a type of thing where, as governor, one of the things I would always do, you can be very busy. I like to get out and do events in different parts of the state, particularly when we're pushing legislation. But I'd always make sure I got home at night. I very rarely stayed overnight anywhere else. And so we'd do that and get home for dinner, if not, before they go to bed. But even if I miss that next morning when they wake up, just making sure that you're present and making sure that you're able to spend time. We've really worked hard to include them.